Question for you. I'm going to play something for you here. There it is. Do you remember sitting next to that bike?
That was like it had carbon fibre, like you could see the fibre. It was very cool.
Let's have a guessing game. 2012, that bike, guess how much it was? To make this more fun, let's make it in AUD. How much do you think that bike was right behind you there?
In 2012.
2012, AUD.
That was a special bike. 12 grand?
Keep going up.
16.
Up.
24.
Up.
Oh. 32.
Up.
What? 56.
No. 40.
That's insane. Why? What was it again? It was like a...
Lamborghini edition.
That's right.
Hand built in Switzerland.
You know, the older I get, the more I've learned to appreciate the big failures in life. For example, me talking to this camera right now and uploading it to YouTube. It all started in 2017 where I failed miserably at trying to get a business off the ground, but I found video through that process and fell in love with it. BMC's greatest fail, in my opinion, has a different flavour to it, of course, and before the keyboard warriors get going, it's not the fork recall of 2018 or 2019 or a Hambini reaming video of 2022. No, it has something to do with their very own IMPEC Lab. Originally a manufacturing facility, but now a research and development facility in Gretchen, Switzerland. And what was then a manufacturing facility was actually born from an idea in 2004/2005 to produce carbon bikes in Switzerland pretty much 100% by robot, which had never been done before. Now, the motivation to do this was based on a desire to create a premium carbon road bike for the market at the time. And in the early 2000s, carbon fiber manufacturing out of China, according to BMC, was challenging in relation to consistent quality and reliable quantities. Now, as many of you would know, BMC did create a bike from this lab called the IMPEC bike. In fact, they even partnered with Lamborghini in 2012/2013 and created a very premium bike. Hence the discussion with Alice earlier, and believe it or not, the yellow version, which came out the year after, had another 5,000 to 10,000 on top of the red version. But the standard IMPEC bike was around the $12,000 USD mark, which was still considerable money in that 2010 to 2015 era. Not so much now, but ultimately the IMPEC bike did not last. Now, I had a full discussion with BMC's head engineer on this topic, Stefan, which I'll link to below. But in simple terms, the idea to create a bike 100% by robot could not be done. It failed. While BMC were able to create the carbon tubes by robot, they learned that the requirement to bond the tubes together with the shells needed human intervention as well as painting the bike. Thus, with unexpected overheads and a diminishing demand for that type of frame technology as the industry was evolving over that 5-year period, BMC put a line through the IMPEC bike around the 2015 mark, and therefore that whole project became a fail. But the silver lining from that fail was BMC were left with a manufacturing facility at their head office in Gretchen, Switzerland. So what does that mean for BMC? Well, I'll let BMC's head engineer explain.
And what we're about to see, do any other major bike brands that you compete with have this?
It's always difficult to speak for the others, but I think it's pretty unique, especially in the approach we are working. This is where we develop our future products and the products that will be in the market in, I would say, 2 to 5 years. Basically, in the IMPEC Lab prototype facility, we can do prototypes in metal. That means we have a CNC machine. We can do prototypes with carbon fibers, and we can even do painting here.
Right.
So our idea is always to have ideas translated into a rideable prototype as quickly as possible, because of course you can calculate things, but not everything that you can calculate translate immediately into a better ride or in a ride feel. It's very simple, it's time and cost. So if we have our ideas, and you know, sometimes ideas are not at the first sight genius.
Yes.
And if you have to go outside to a prototype shop, whether this is in the area or whether this is even abroad, you automatically have a time delay, but you also have higher cost. So we want to make it easy, very easy for all the ideas to turn into a prototype.
And pushback, so they can't do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Of course, we have many ideas that never translate into a commercial product, but at least we tried and we know it works or it doesn't work. I can show you some examples.
Yes.
Yeah, this one is a seat post that we made a prototype, and the challenge was basically find out how does a seat post ride that is down to the UCI limit of minimum 10 millimeter width, because you would assume that such a tiny seat post, obviously it must be aerodynamic because the frontal area is super low.
And very uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable, yeah. I think that's an obvious thing. But we wanted to find out if the lateral stiffness has a big impact, because obviously if you go that narrow, you lose lateral stiffness.
Yes.
And so we built a prototype. That's a typical example of how we do here. So we take typically existing parts, we cut them, we make adapters, always with the target to be on the road as quickly as possible.
Right.
So this seat post fits a traditional frame. You can adjust the height, you can go riding, then you take 10 people out of the R&D team, you give it for a ride and they give feedback, and then you understand if actually while riding what you have already calculated can be felt. Yes. Because it's obvious there is a loss in stiffness laterally, but is it actually a bad thing when riding? And it turned out that this might not be a good solution for every bike. Other examples, you might have seen we did a prototype for a new speed bike. It was seen with a Red Bull paint job on it. The prototype was entirely done in the IMPEC Lab. So all the carbon works, but also the molds for it. For instance, this is the mold for the handlebar, that then the carbon part was manufactured here as much as the entire prototype. Looking a bit more into the future, this is a Roadmachine frame from the current generation. We all know internal storage is a popular topic today, I would say, for some categories, for instance endurance bikes.
Can you show us?
Yeah, and what we wanted to find out is how can we make a cutout in a tube without losing too much of the stiffness, because it's very obvious if you have an opening like that, it will translate into a loss in stiffness. And we have tried out different positions, different ways of manufacturing. Yeah, let's see, maybe one of those solutions makes it in one of the future BMC products.
So has that been ridden?
This has been ridden, this has been tested in the lab, because we always want to do the correlation between something that we measure and how does this translate into something that we feel. This is very important. And so we want to build here rideable prototypes. It's very, very crucial.
Yes.
We are always, I would say, let's put it that way, it depends what we want to redo or what we want to do new. If it's really functional things, functional features, we definitely always want to validate them here. Let's say if it's more on the production manufacturing side, and if it's not completely new, then we might not do it here. But yeah, let's see which features we have in mind for the new Teammachine, and then we will decide what we validate here. But if it's technical features, like let's call it clampings, head tube solutions, things like that, definitely we will do a prototype here. And typically we do not do the entire frame, we just prototype the area that carries this feature to validate, okay, it works, let's move this to the commercial product. Typically for a project like a new Teammachine, it's 3 to 4 people involved. That means one main project leader who goes from the ideation back to the industrialization, so he does all the journey. In many cases, he's also the person drawing the frames with the help of an industrial designer. And then we have at least one person always supervising, let's say, the project and giving also in experience. In some cases it's me, in other cases it's Tobias, who is also a senior engineer in BMC. And then a fourth person that is always part of the project, obviously, is the product manager. It's not someone from R&D, but It's basically the person who is in charge of being responsible for what we develop in R&D also commercially makes sense. So in the end, we are making our living with selling bikes. So we need to address the rider needs, and this is the product manager's role to bring in this perspective. So it's 4 people, typically over a period of 24 months,
Wow.
I would say. Typically you also have kind of an overlap between 2 projects.
Yes.
So in some phases you also work on other projects. In total we are 14 people developing, creating bikes, I would say, together with the IMPEC Lab staff.
Very cool. Well, thanks for showing us around.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.